Welcome to partialarc.com. Don't do that.
In the grim darkness of the far future, there is only war. And a lot of weird shit. Roll to seize!
Welcome to Roll to Seize. This is episode 36. I'm your host, Jay Jones, and I'm joined by my co-host and Warhammer enthusiast, Andrew Dickinger.
That's me.
Andrew, this is our 30-year anniversary.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing. Perfect timing.
Yeah, we've been paying rent here for 3 years. Well, not all 3 years. We kind of hid here for a little
I was
while.
like, we were definitely not paying rent that whole time.
They asked us recently to start paying rent, but
I'm pretty sure that contract extends beyond our natural life, which... Can they make it beyond our natural life?
You're right. I'm looking at the papers right now. I did not read that last section. It had this whole thing about the Infinity Matrix and, like, job requirements and workers' comp in the Infinity Matrix.
Did I read that? Does that say a million years? I think that says a million years.
I thought that was a joke, but I guess this was a legal document, also a spiritual document. Most of it is, I believe, made of, like, flesh and ghosts. But,
Weird.
We really should have read the fine print on that one. Is that why they were laughing after we handed it to them?
I thought it was just because they were clowns.
Yeah, I thought they just get, Harlequins, I just figured, that when they're happy, they laugh. When they're sad, they laugh. But, like, sad,
Sadly.
like, sadly laughing. Like Pagliacci. But yeah, guys, I mean, for our 3-year anniversary, it couldn't be more perfect that 8th edition just dropped this past month.
Yeah, a.k.a. Dark Imperium?
Dark Imperium?
Maybe?
New Hammer? Is its name? Like, I really feel like I haven't gotten a concrete answer, because, like, some sources are like, call it New Warhammer, and some sources are like, well, it's 8th edition, and then, like, all the boxes say Dark Imperium, and I can't really find one firm way or another. It's weird.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll just call it Dark Imperium.
We'll just call it Dark Imperium, yeah. But yeah, we had a chance to really dig into 8th edition this last month, and we went to a tournament just, like, literally yesterday as we're recording this.
Yep.
So we're fresh out of the battlescape, essentially, and 8th edition is 1,000% just very, very fun. Really enjoy it.
So yeah, we'll be doing something a little different this time, and we'll basically be talking about in our Brown Library segment our first impressions of basically everything we've experienced in the game so far. But before that begins,
We got to do our Seasons of the Month. Boy, we were learning a lot this month.
I mean, like,
our mistakes were much greater.
When it's a brand new game and you've a game that you've been playing for 7 years and then you suddenly know nothing, mistakes were made.
Yeah, they were. My goodness. Andrew, you go first.
You fucker.
That's
God damn
right.
it. All right, so I've played a lot of in-house games, and then we just played this past tournament, which is 3 games there. I actually have a C's that's not related to the tournament because I'm still digesting everything that happened in that. I'm still in what I call the experimental phase for my Tyranids because they are basically a brand new army now.
Yeah, you've been pretty much trying everything. Like
everything.
Buffet style.
Yeah, even in this last tournament, I used like 6 different units that I basically had never used before because I just need to see how everything works to get some kind of ballpark median of like, this is good, this is bad, this fits my playstyle, this doesn't.
Because, like, one thing we can say for sure now is that Tyranids are great.
They are, like I said, complete 180. They are actually a fully competitive army now. They have some really awesome, some borderline, maybe 2 good things.
Which we can talk about.
And then, like, even with the Forge World stuff, it was like, some stuff was like, wow, this is, yeah, I'm always going to take this. And then some stuff was like, I don't know what they were thinking here.
I think somebody fell asleep halfway through writing this thing's rules and just like, let's keep some of the 7th edition stuff and, I don't know, add 200 points on there.
Yeah, some doesn't make sense. But in any case, I was playing against Jay, Jay's now full bore into Harlequins.
Oh, yeah!
Because Harlequins are actually also very good now.
I will say it was very much like we kind of got our wish for sure for this edition, which like Andrew and I have been ecstatic over the last month because I think in the last episode I even called out like, man, I just really hope I can play my Harlequins even like okay, like even if they're just fine.
Not getting table turn 1.
And even you with Tyranids, and then from our first game and games since, like Tyranids and Harlequins are really good.
They're good. Yeah, so our first game, we're 1-1 right now. Our first game was a good learning experience of don't charge a flying hive turret near 5 fusion guns. That was a bit.
Yeah, don't do that.
That was a mistake.
My Harlequins are like unholstering their guns, like yes, come closer.
Just vaporized him, and then
shoot her.
But my yeah, exactly. My C's was in our second game, so I was trying this new stratagem. I think the key to the Tyranid army that I play, because I'm not playing a horde style, because it doesn't work out well for me. What I was running was a bunch of essentially null deploy deep strike stuff. In 8th edition, you can only reserve half your army now, and it has, even if it's uneven, it has to be the majority.
Right, and this is again to clarify.
The majority has to be on the board.
Right, and also to clarify, this is only for match play. So if you play open or narrative, you can do whatever you want. Right?
Yeah.
But when we talk about like our tournaments and like kind of like rules around that, we'll probably mostly be referring to match play.
It's almost always going to be at match play.
Yeah.
I can't think of a situation that won't be unless we in-house play a narrative.
Play a narrative game, yeah.
But I was running Gene Stealers with a Trigon Prime, because Trigons now have their tunneler rule is when they do it, their deep strike, which they've always had. Now they can come in turn 1 without scatter. Amazing.
Very good.
But they can bring a troop, specifically a troop unit, with them in the tunnel. So I brought 20 Gene Stealers in the tunnel with the Trigon, because that sounded hilarious.
Yes.
So I did that.
It's the worst tunnel to find.
Yeah, basically, it's like...
Did you find oil down there, Jimmy?
Maybe treasure?
No, I found, oh God, 20 Gene Stealers.
But then I also was deep striking Swarmlord in a pod, who that is still a strategy that it's
it's an incredibly good. I mean, whatever. He's the best sniper in Tyranids.
Yes.
Oh, what do you want to kill? That? Oh, hold on one second. Drop, double move, kill you.
Yes, because specifically, even though the drop happens at the end of the movement phase, his ability, his Hive Commander ability to give a unit within 6 inches, including himself, a free move and advance if they want, happens in the shooting phase. So it's like he drops in, he's 9 inches away. Hey, look, I have a 9-inch move. I'm 1 inch away.
I'm 1 inch away from whatever I want to kill.
And he is, he's very good. So against this army, and Jay's army it's a fast deployment army because most of his stuff is in transports, except for the Solitaire. But I was doing this drop army essentially to see how much I can basically just overwhelm his lines early in the game. And the mistake that I made, and it was kind of just more, I was greedy than anything else.
Well, you just also, like, again, like you said before, we're testing, right?
It's the experimental
You're
stage.
like, hey, what happens if I just drop my whole Tyranid army in his backfield? And actually, I think at this time, you guys can go up, if you check out our Instagram, you'll actually see some clips and videos from that game.
Yep. So I dropped Swarmlord, I dropped Gene Stealer, so this is a bit of a two-part C's. I dropped the Gene Stealers with the Trigon, I dropped Swarmlord in the drop pod, and I also dropped Death Leaper and the Red Terror, because they can do it. They are hilarious. I love them.
They are.
But my mistake was that I was really greedy to just try and assault the Solitaire turn 1, because he left a nice little gap in the back, and I was like, I just want Swarmlord to just go and just crush Jay's hopes of the Solitaire.
Bastard.
So I dropped in, and he got the assault, obviously, because it's guaranteed. And I dropped the Stealers in. The problem, though, is that the Stealers actually should have been where the Swarmlord is, because I needed to save the stratagem to reroll their charge for them specifically, and if I had, then I could have basically assaulted all of his transports with the Gene Stealers and then maybe had a better chance at the game. But because I put the Gene Stealers on a flank where they could only realistically charge 1 unit and a transport, they charged, they killed it, and then they were just there.
And then they got killed.
And there's a lot of hemming and hawing on the forums right now with regards to Gene Stealer being the tits. And I'm just going to be on the line right now and say that they aren't guaranteed as amazing as everybody makes them out to be. They are paper in this edition. They die so fast, like to anything in the game.
Right. And I mean, a lot of that comes down to like the heavy amounts of shooting that's in the game.
Yes.
I mean, there's always been heavy amounts of shooting, but how powerful it is now. And we'll get into a little bit about that on our first impressions in the Brown Library. But yeah, I mean...
But even combat, that's the thing, is because combat favors chargers, like even using 2 stratagem points, which is in the new rules, you can interrupt their chargers and have a unit go second. All he has to do is have 1 Clowntown Harlequin unit, which are really good, charge my Gene Stealers, and have them go first, and there's not a damn thing I can do about it.
You can do, yeah.
And I lost 20 Gene Stealers in 1 turn. Like, only lost like 5 to shooting, but then 1 Harlequin troop assaulted it and killed all of the rest of them before they could fight. And I was just like, I don't know if that's worth 260 points for that one-off.
That's a lot of points.
They've never really, and I know this is a bad term to use of making their points back, But when you're investing that many points, like an eighth of your army in a unit that only kills 100-point transport, and doesn't really damage the guys inside, which are the real like juice part of that army, then it's a problem.
I do think, like you said, like with your C's, like sending them at a different target, I think if you had like sent them at the transports and they just clawed down those transports, that might have, I mean, one would have made their points back if we're using that verbiage, but also like it definitely would have really crippled my mobility and movement, and now all my guys are just like kind of sitting there
on the ground, because Harlequin transports are super resilient against shooting, and if I had clawed them out, then like at least like my exocrine and stuff could have been threatening them on the ground. But I mean, an exocrine, even as good as an exocrine is, shooting it at Harlequin transport is really inefficient.
Yeah, they got that -1 to hit.
But my side season, this was my first time using Red Terror, and I fully endorse Red Terror, but I shouldn't have deployed him in line of sight to you. I found that the strategy afterwards, after I thought about it, I should have just dumped him behind the ruin out of line of sight, because he's small.
And you can charge things now that you can't see.
So I could put him out of line of sight. He also has a 12-inch move, which means that which means I should have just put him there and just waited a turn and just been like, did you forget about him? Wow!
And then when you like, if with Gene Stealers, if you pop my Star Weavers, then he can just find one character and be like, hey, and jump him and just eat that dude.
Exactly, because like he has actually like, I mean, like even going against the normal Harlequins, having 7 attacks like that forces you to do saves.
He killed like he did fight a unit, and he killed like most of that unit.
Yeah, so like so those are my seizes. So Jay, what are your seizes?
My C's. So I also had kind of a C's that I was like a light C's essentially, like that I want to just bring up real quick, just in general with the game, because we could probably talk about a bunch of learning experiences with this game.
So many mistakes.
One small one was from our very first game, which we actually put some clips up on Instagram. That was the first stuff we put up from our very first game. And one thing I learned that was very small in that game, again, Harlequins versus Tyrannids, you were using a bunch of different units of Gene Stealers. This one you just talked about, you had one big unit of Gene Stealers, but in that game you had like a couple units. And Harlequins, incredible in close combat, but they need to control when they enter combat, because if they don't, if someone charges them, oh boy, they are T3, and yeah, they've got invols, all have invols, but it's just a 4-up invol. Weight of attacks from anything will kill them. Even Space Marines, just like regular attacks in close combat without any rend or extra damage, will take them down. They're 1 wound apiece at T3.
12 wounds technically kills a 6-man Harlequin unit.
Oh yeah, for sure. So when you at one part of that game just threw units and units of Gene Stealers, like multi-charge 3 units of Harlequins, which I have a bunch of units of Harlequins, but when you multi-charge 3 of them, you're basically killing half of my army. And at that point, this is where the C's comes in, I didn't have any stratagems left. And stratagems are really cool, and I want to talk about them for just a second, and are really key to keeping an army, like if you have a close combat army, they are just necessary to have in your back pocket.
Yeah, you got to have those 2 in the reserve for an interruption, because
by that point I was just playing fast and loose with the stratagems. Like, I want to do an extra like psychic power, I want to like get an extra fusion gun shot, and like I was not really thinking about that resource. And by the end of the game, if I just had at least those 2 stratagem points, I could have saved a Harlequin unit. They would have killed the Gene Stealers, and that unit could have done some more stuff. But since I had nothing, you just wiped 3 units of my army without me being able to do anything.
Yeah.
So that was like one C's, and I guess kind of my side C's. Jay and Andrew introducing side C's.
Side C's.
Now,
The
after
new
3
feature.
years. The new feature, because our pain in a singular point wasn't enough. But essentially, as a side C's, in the tournament, playing against a bunch of different armies, shooting is very powerful in this new edition, and we'll talk about that in the Brown Library segment. But essentially, one thing that happened in a game is I was playing against Space Marines, and Space Marines, by the way, Rowboat Guilliman, the as we've talked about him before here on this show, Mr. Rowboat, the Swamp Lord that is actually the head of the Imperium.
Yeah.
He is incredibly powerful. His reroll to hits and reroll to wounds.
Some would say too powerful.
For chapter tactics, which I was like, in my mind, I'm like, oh, well, okay, cool. Like, you know, tactical Marines and some Devastators will get some rerolls. That's fine. That's good. What I didn't realize that also relates to is things like, I don't know, a Fire Raptor from Forge World, which, my goodness, Fire Raptor from Forge World Why?
If it wasn't bad enough before, it's now even worse.
Why do you still exist and haunt me to this day? I hated that unit in 7th edition, and yet it is still around worse than ever, especially comboed with Rowboat, but I digress. Anyways, this army had, like, incredible firepower, and was, like, a really, really, really strong gun line, and since I deployed pretty much almost entirely first, he was able to castle up everything in a corner, so I just had to get to him. So essentially sending my dudes at him, and my big seize of this fight was, again, it kind of comes down to being new to the game, but I didn't really know one of these rules that was very key, which was how to embark on vehicles. Because Harlequins really, the only way to get close to an enemy, they really got to stay in those Starweavers. And as I was fighting and my guys were hopping out and killing some Scions and some other Space Marines and fighting a Knight, there was a Knight in this game, a lot of mean stuff. But essentially coming out and fighting these different things, essentially what happened is at the end of my opponent's turn, it was my turn again, and I had a bunch of guys that were just like near a couple still active Starweavers with nobody inside, but I thought the embark rules for transports work the same way as disembark, where at the start of the movement, you got to be within 3, and that's the only way you can embark. And I was like, they're just outside of 3, I guess I'll just have to run them at the enemy, which is not wise to do with
run flimsy Harlequins at a gun line?
T3 one-wound models at a gun line, but it was the only way I thought I could do it. And turns out, you can actually embark units at any time during the movement phase, as long as you end your move within 3.
It doesn't even restrict the movement of the transport itself.
Yeah, so like you can like immediately run your Harlequins up, or any unit, to a transport and be within 3, load them, and then the vehicle can fly up. Like my Starweavers move 16, and that would have changed a lot at the end of the game, protecting them more and getting them a lot closer to the enemy that I needed to take out. So that's a big seize for me, just because that game was so tough to take down and get to a gun line that far away with a close combat army.
And a simple mistake like that cost you a lot.
I think it cost me like 2 units, because I had 2 Starweavers that were open, and if I could have gotten those 2 units into that gun line, that could have really turned things around. But I got gunned down horribly by Fire Raptors and some sort of turret thing that Space Marines have now. I believe it's in Forge World. Tarox Primes, my goodness, with 30 bolter shots. Holy crap. But yeah, guys, so those were our seasons of the month. We learned a lot from playing each other, playing in this tournament.
Yep.
Overall, like, 8th edition is just a blast. Right now, we're going to hop into the Brown Library segment and talk a little bit about our first impressions. Here we are in the Brown Library, organizing all these new indexes, putting them up everywhere.
Yeah, everything else is in boxes, but then you put them in the boxes. As soon as you seal it with that weird-looking tape, the box vanished. I don't know.
Very strange. I mean, really nice organization. You don't have to move them.
Yeah, I mean it moves itself? Question mark.
Very odd. Sentient boxes. All right. Well, it is the Black Library, I guess. But yeah, we're digging into these indexes in the rulebook. It is 8th edition officially now, or New Hammer, or Dark Imperium.
Yeah.
And yeah, we just wanted to take this time to kind of go through these indexes and rulebook, not, point by point, unit by unit, rule by rule, but kind of give our general first impressions and the big things we kind of took away from this last month of digging into the new edition.
Yes, we can just go by section, essentially.
Yeah, essentially work our way through the phases. So starting at, like, how do we feel about how the game starts, like pre-game?
Okay, so, like, starting off with pre-game, there's been a lot of, I guess, fervor, I should say, with regards to how and redirection with how the game should begin. And that's because they had a very specific method, which is very similar to Age of Sigmar, where essentially you have a dice roll, and that dice roll determines the map and the side that they want, essentially. Mm-hmm. And then after that, the person who didn't win that roll puts their first unit down, and that essentially gives them the chance to deploy all their units first, and that would make them go first or second. It was their choice.
Right.
So the ITC implemented a new thing where essentially there is still a roll for first turn, but the person who deploys first gets a +1.
Right.
And I can say I thought that was going to be necessary, because that would mean previously it meant that certain armies like Tyranids would never get the choice to go first, because you just have to have too many things. And now, after playing the tournament, I'm not sure it's entirely necessary for there to be that role.
We're a bit on the fence. And the thing is, like, there are a couple tweak things here and there, and, you know, we really appreciate ITC being really on the ball to, like, make their updates right away and be open to community feedback, as well as GW, too. We don't want to count them out. They've been always great about taking feedback lately, especially this last year where things have changed so greatly. So we're really excited to see how the pregame develops. If it stays the way it is, whether it's how ITC has ruled it or as GW has ruled it.
We'll just adapt to it.
But we'll adapt and talk about it going forward. So let's talk about the movement phase.
All right, so movement in general has been entirely rehauled, thank God.
In my opinion, I freaking love how the movement phase works.
I mean, you know me as a Tyranid player, having everything, including what should be super fast monstrous creatures, only moving 6 frickin' inches, was the most frustrating thing in existence.
Really, it was?
Next to grenades, I would say, probably.
And now that's gone.
And yes, thank God. But yeah, movement in general, just having variable movement stat has made sense for a long time, and I don't really understand, because we're not in the ear of GW, of why they like hesitated for so long to change that, because fantasy had that for a long time, and it was one of the things that was like revered in fantasy. And then they just like were like, no, it's got to be uniform in 40k, and I almost feel like it was uniform in 40k because there was too many other things going on where it's like you just have to say, if it's this, it's this, if it's that, it's that.
Right.
Because like, oh God.
Yeah, because at a certain point, because the rules, I mean, gosh, especially in 7th edition, got so wild and all over the place, like, they had to keep something that was uniform, you know?
Exactly. So, in general, I mean, this can be short and sweet. I think the movement's great. I think everything feels like it should feel with regards to movement.
Oh, yeah.
Eldar vehicles not having a 36-inch move, but still most of them being like
still,
16 inches
and
is
in
great.
this form of the game, like, my transports, my Star Weavers moving 16, and if they advance, they auto 6, they go 22. That's good enough.
That's
I
great.
mean, that's really, really good in my opinion. And yes, like you said, there's no longer this 48 move that the freaking jet bikes can do, because I think everybody really saw last edition, like, okay, I mean, this is pretty silly that Eldar scat bikes can do this.
Faster than a flyer is probably not a good idea. But yeah, I mean, even armies like Dark Eldar now, having like universally actually fluffy-wise fast vehicles is great.
And those fluffy vehicles not affecting how they shoot to tie into the fluff.
I mean, like, it's just they're paper pirate ships. Like, they literally shaved everything off the there's sails on them.
Yeah.
They shaved everything off of them to be as fast as possible.
Well, as we've established, in the webway, there's a lot of webway wind that happens.
Yes,
and
there's warp winds.
You gotta catch that warp wind when you're flying out there.
But yeah, I mean, like, everything feels like it should. Even in Tyranids, like, Carnifex is being faster than Space Marines and stuff like that, and even the Swarmlord having like a 9-inch move.
I mean,
it's
just
great.
from momentum, those guys are so big. Once they start moving, like,
I mean,
they're gonna go fast.
They ain't stopping. The one thing I will say with regards to movement, and there's some haze around it right now.
Oh, he's about to drop a bomb.
Is being able to move through obstacles. And currently, rules as written right now is that only infantry can move through a wall of a ruin.
Yep.
And this is a problem, because if we need to introduce a lot of line of sight blocking terrain into the game, then things like monstrous creatures and knights and vehicles are going to have immense problems getting around.
Sir, we need to move the knight through the building. Go now. I can't. I for some reason
That wall it's such fine brick. Look at that light there. Look at that window. It's beautiful.
This wood is made of the stuff of stars.
Yes, it's like
my goodness.
I mean, especially like even from my perspective, for something like a Carnifex's fluff is literally
like he literally barrels through buildings.
It's a battering ram. That's what they're designed for. Is their siege breakers, and then I have to go around. It's a weird thing, and
as we've established, I think we talked about this, you and I, is that Carnifexes and Imperial Knights, they operate as Roombas now.
Right.
They basically they go up to
nope.
I sense there's a wall there. I gotta go there's another wall. Oh no, gotta go this way.
So I think that's the only real haze in the movement phase right now, and that needs to get resolved pronto, because if they keep it like that, sure, that's fine. but then we can't have this restriction to the movement around that. We can't have obstacles that are like 30 inches long because that's
Well,
just,
right. Then that'll be pretty tough.
because then it's like just a 30-inch wall that my stuff has to go around.
It's interesting because with a lot of these new, and I think a lot of it is actually not as much as GW adapting to us. I think it's actually for this specific scenario with movement and terrain, it's a lot of on the community and tournament organizers to adapt to GW.
Exactly.
Because I think we've just gotten so used to, I mean, even you and I in our home games,
Yes.
of just like throwing whatever ruins we want on the table and just be like, this looks cool, like let's play on it, right? But now that rules with how terrain looks and works like really does impact strategy in such a big way, tournament organizers are really going to have to think about the type of terrain that they have and not only how it interacts with different parts of the game, but how it interacts with the models as well. And with this kind of area, I think the game overall in 8th edition has done a really good job of adapting as much as they can to fit fluff to make it work with gameplay. This might just be one area where they were like they wanted to balance against monsters and big things, so to give infantry a bit of a buff, and it doesn't fluff wise make a lot of sense, but it was maybe a way that they gameplay wise wanted to balance the game a little bit more.
My only counter to it would be there are so many things with Fly in the game and Fly ignores it entirely.
Right.
It needs to be clarified. But anyway, moving on.
Now Psychic Phase I think we can talk about very quickly. I think we both just love it.
It's great. It's great. All the naysayers, you just gotta get used to it.
And like if you
It's fucking
peril,
awesome.
yes, peril is hilarious and bad, but also that's what stratagems are for. Like keep one stratagem there
and it
like
should be bad.
and yeah, it should be bad. And like if you have a stratagem ready to go, like you can stop it pretty easily unless you roll a 1 twice or a 6 twice on your peril. And in that case, it's kind of like, hey, I guess the game just wants you to
Cinematic rules. It was
die,
meant to
apparently.
happen.
And most psychers, unless like in Astra Militarum and some of them that are actually like 3 wounds, in most cases your psyker should hopefully survive.
Yeah,
like
that D3 is not an immense threat.
right. I mean, I'm eventually gonna like run like a Thousand Suns army, and actually that's one thing I wanted to talk about in this episode. I know last edition in 7th I primarily ran Eldar, so a lot of our episodes like this on Roll to Seize, it was just me kind of telling you guys about different experiences with my Eldar, which is fine. But this new edition, I'm very much dedicated to really getting a full spectrum of
Branching
a lot
out.
of different armies. Yeah, like yes, Eldar are a little different in this edition, and I'm waiting to see how they develop when the codexes come out, which they've rumored codexes are a thing.
Because things
obviously,
have faction
they have
keywords that
faction
you don't
keywords
fill
that aren't
in.
filled in. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm very interested to see how Eldar develops when they get things like Elatic and Bealtan and those kind of come out. Because right now the only real craft world is like Anari, really.
Yeah.
And I'm waiting to see how Eldar develops because they changed definitely in a big way with this new edition. So I'm really excited to play with Harlequins, to try out my Thousand Suns, to try out some Necrons. So
Yeah, just to go into these old armies that you didn't play previously because you were frustrated with how everything was working.
Right.
But this edition, like, everything is essentially usable now. So it's just
and
like...
they're all really cool, and a lot of them are really fluffy and like play how I would hope that they would play. Like I'm so excited that like the Nightbringer is incredible.
Catan are good.
And he can fly, so like you could just have like this like Grim Reaper fly up to like a vehicle in the air and just like cut it out of the sky with a giant scythe. And to me, cinematically, that just is awesome. So I'm excited to do that a little bit more, but I think we can just say Psychic Phase, great. Shooting Phase, I mean, not much to talk about. I love the split fire. I think it works great.
yeah, Splitfire is the thing that should have always been there.
I'm also really okay with the new advanced turret technology that we've developed here in the Grimdark.
Oh, where you can shoot from anywhere on anything? Yeah.
Which we talked about in our arena episode. But yeah, like I think it simplifies things. And yeah, I know it's not like perfectly fluffy. Like there's a turret on the other side of the tank. How can it shoot that guy?
Yeah,
But-
it makes sense if you're only playing with like 10 to 15 models.
Yeah, and also it makes sense if you want to think about it cinematically, like, yes, the tank's turret is on the other side, but if you think about this game as a game in motion, right?
Yes.
It's a game in motion, so tanks are turning and driving like they would be turning and moving and shooting as they go, so like you have to kind of give a little bit of a edge there in far of like how these things would play if they're actually moving.
You also can't argue it via the rules of today because this is the 41st millennium. It's literally like 40,000 years from now.
And as we said, the turret technology there is pretty damn good.
Yeah, I mean, they have flying tanks. Like, trying to argue, like, oh, via a tank today, this Layman Russ can't turn and fire because these reasons. You do realize this is in space.
Yeah.
With aliens and demons, in fact.
And demons.
And you're trying to argue logic into it.
Machines have spirits in this game.
Yeah, and it's just better. Yeah, this is more fun to just play it this way. The last thing, shooting is still as powerful as it is.
It's so powerful, and I think kind of the last first impression I'd leave here with shooting is harks back a little bit to my C's earlier in this episode, but also just what we've seen in general. Reese from ITC, from Frontline Gaming, has indicated very early on when this edition was releasing that, like, we really need line of sight blocking terrain.
Yes, it is essential.
And it wasn't until we played at this tournament that I came face to face with it. I have a close combat, close range army.
We were both playing close combat armies.
But, like, in general, like, just seeing the types of armies that can be built in 8th are very, very powerful with shooting, whether they are knights, whether they are rowboat with fire raptors giving everybody rerolls to hits and wounds.
How does
with a million shots?
How does 3 fire raptors, a void shield generator, and rowboat feel for you? Because, man, that was a thing.
Tarok's primes with, like, they're like 100 points with like 30 shots apiece. So, like, shooting is incredibly powerful in this edition, and I think it's really important, one thing to take away from this last tournament, that, like, we definitely, you know, if you're experiencing this, definitely talk to your tournament organizers. Like, obviously they want to do their best to make the edition as fun as possible. I think what we're going to have to adapt to, which is kind of coming off of the heels of 7th, is in 7th edition, I feel like the terrain was less because there were so many Death Stars, you needed to shoot them a bunch.
Yes.
You needed to have this open terrain to blast these things before they got to you to even have a chance to survive. Now it's the reverse. Since Death Stars are gone, shooting is so powerful.
Yeah, it's essentially reeled back to 4th and 5th edition, which is like when like Cities of Death and stuff first came out, and people realized, like, with like the advent of Tau and then with like gun fexes and stuff like that, like, you need some kind of obstacles, or these armies that have board range weapons, like, they're just gonna annihilate you.
Just blow you away.
So moving on, charge phase, fine.
Yeah.
There's nothing really, but I have no comments.
It works great. I guess next we'll talk about is fight phase. I think there's going to be a lot in this edition, guys. Really look at the rules, get into the minutia of, like, how you pile in, when you consolidate, where you charge a unit, because you might pull in not only a hero for heroic intervention, but you also might pull in another opponent accidentally.
Yeah.
Which, remember, this is something to keep in mind. You can only attack what you declared that you were charging. Even if you pull in other enemy units, they can attack you back, but you cannot attack things that you did not declare a charge against.
Yes.
You might just want to be like, I charge a whole bunch of things, and, like, you only make it to a few, but at least this way you can fight them. You're just giving them an opportunity to overwatch you.
Yes, Assault is going to be very powerful this edition, and at the same time, there's a very simple caveat to counter Assault, and that's the ability for anything in the game to fall back.
Yeah.
And that, as I saw playing against Astra Militarum, that's incredibly powerful when they can literally just dump their entire squad out of combat and all your stuff's in the open. And, like, a 6 and 1/2 dozen in the other situation where it's like, yeah, it's really great because combat is way more strong and, like, you can cut through units and everything like that. But then if also you play badly with it and you just throw a thing against like 30 guys, those 30 guys are going to survive and then
they're just going to step back, be like, whoops, sorry.
And then your thing's going to get blown away. So yeah, so Assault phase I think is great. I'm excited to actually play an Assault army again for the first time in years.
It's really fun. And without having to, like, think about, like, how do I give them a 2+ rerollable symbol?
And worry about grenades or initiative or...
It's so nice.
So yeah.
Last phase, morale, I think is good.
It's operating like Age of Sigmar, and it should, and it's great.
Yeah,
and
it doesn't penalize units, like, too much. Like, in most cases, I was very rarely losing guys to morale phase.
Hey, a good thing for you with your old way you used to play Eldar, you won't have your Leadership 8 fucking Guardians running off the board anymore.
My Guardians used to run off the board all the time. My goodness.
So that's gone. The last thing I think we can leave with is how casualties are removed, because that's part of the morale phase as well. And everybody was afraid that with pick models, then, you know, they're just going to keep the special weapons alive forever. But with the costs of everything now, yeah, it makes sense. And also, that's how, like, an actual unit works, is
Yeah.
protecting the special weapons.
And I also see it again kind of like I shot at the front of the unit, why is the back guy dying? Again, like kind of talking a little bit before, like how turrets can fire when they're not facing, you have to think about it cinematically. So if the guys who are running at you are all in motion, like they're not like, I run, I stop, I shoot, now let them shoot, then we run again. Like they're in motion. So if you shot a guy, they're running over that dead body, he's now behind them.
Well, also another way to argue it is the guy in front isn't an immensely, impossibly large wall that you can't get through until he's gone. Like, you could be running, and you have a unit running, and it's 30 guys deep, but because they're in motion, the bullet happens to pass through a lot of them and hit a guy in the back.
Also, they can see what's shooting at them. The guy in the back probably can't, so they're moving out of the way, and the other guy's like, wait, what's going on?
There's
Boom, bullet right in the
multiple
face.
ways to argue around it, and still for it to make sense. And honestly, it just makes it way less time-consuming, frustrating with regards to unit placement.
Allocating wounds to multiple different guys. Now, there should only ever be one person in a unit that has a wound counter next to them.
Yeah, you can't. There are no more wound shenanigans. It doesn't exist.
It just streamlines the game a lot more. It's cinematic. It's a lot of fun. And like, I would just say, kind of capping off here, I think this edition has done so many amazing things for not only the hobby, for getting new people in the game, but also for like bringing back a lot of fun. We had people just at this tournament that we haven't seen in years playing 40K, and it was like welcoming people back, like, you know, welcome back to playing orcs, to playing Tyranids, playing Dark Eldar, to playing these armies that like got kind of relegated to the sidelines, and even units within games. Terminators are on the board again.
Yeah,
things that people just loved that they couldn't really rationalize playing without getting stomped every game is here again.
Yes.
And, I mean, we just got to say, from being here in the Black Library, I know the Harlequins upstairs are flipping out. They're flipping normally because they're ninja clowns.
I mean, you're like their number one fanboy.
Yeah, I mean, I've always been pulling for these guys, which is why we hang out here in the Black Library. But, I mean, they definitely got a boost. And look forward to some more Harlequin stories, because I'm digging in deep in the well of Clowntown.
Well, I mean, the Great Devourer is nigh, Jay. I mean, it's just a matter of time until you become food.
Oh, God. I knew you were in a Gene Stealer cult. I knew it. I said it forever.
I am not in any such thing. You shut up.
My God. Well, guys, that was episode 36 of Roll to Seize, our 3rd-year anniversary, and our kickoff to 8th edition. So exciting.
Yes.
We'll be posting a new episode of this segment every last Wednesday of the month, with episodes of Dark Heresy the 1st and 2nd Wednesday, and 40K Arena every 3rd Wednesday, which, speaking of 40K Arena, send us your picks for what you guys want to see.
Oh, yeah.
It's a new edition, so
everything's on the table.
Everything's on the table at this point. And if you'd like to download more episodes or check out other similar podcasts, like Friday Night Quests, it's a podcast essentially with me DMing and a bunch of great characters running through a D&D campaign. So check it out. And you can email us any questions at rolltoseize@gmail.com, or chat with us on dakadaka.com to help decide future Brown Library segments, which again, doors wide open now with a new edition. You can always search for fluffy/underrated units in the 40K general discussion forums, or I believe you can just search Roll to Seize, right?
Yep. You can just search Roll to Seize as well.
Perfect. Of course, you can always follow us on Twitter, Instagram for tournament and model picks, and some videos from our recent games. We'll post some more up there at Partial Arc. Thanks for listening, and get out there and play 8th edition!